Today, I am interviewing Dr. Erin MacDonald. That's right here on You're Watching a Movie with Silas Lindenstein. I, Silas Lindenstein, your host, am interviewing the astrophysicist, the great science speaker, Dr. Erin MacDonald, who is also a voice actor on Star Trek Prodigy Season 2. That's how I got her on here, going around on a press talking about Prodigy being on Netflix now. So check that out. I just can't even, I'm having trouble with my emotions right now, expressing how excited I was to have somebody from the world of Star Trek. She is the science consultant for Star Trek, which some of you out there are like, what's science? Well, there is science. And actually she explains why Star Trek is science fiction and not fantasy, which is something different than I had heard before. And that was exciting to hear. She answers the 7 questions that I ask everybody, but she also answers some listener questions that they popped in when they knew that I was going to interview her. So I want you to check that out. Listen for your question. If you were the one who dropped some questions, I wasn't able to do all of them, but I got some of them in. It was a short 20-ish minute interview. And there's so much. Let me to tell you about her. If you're not familiar with her, if you haven't heard her up, I would suggest YouTube and learn more about her. But Erin MacDonald is a writer, speaker, producer, and science advisor, best known for her current work as the official science advisor for the Star Trek franchise. She has voiced her fictional counterpart in the Star Trek universe, Lieutenant Commander Dr. Erin MacDonald, in Star Trek Prodigy, and the communicator Erin has appeared on NPR's Science Friday and Shortwave podcasts, provided commentary for numerous docuseries, and wrote and hosted award-winning Science of Star Trek promotional videos for Paramount Plus. She wrote the baby board book, Star Trek, My First Book of Space, and wrote and narrated an Audible original, The Science of Sci-Fi, in collaboration with the great courses. I don't know what that means, but that's on her bio. Prior to all this work, she received her PhD at 25 at the University of Glasgow in Scotland and conducted research with the Laser Interferometer Gravitational Wave Observatory scientific collaboration, but left shortly before their 2017 Nobel Prize winning discovery of gravitational waves. She's amazing. She's a hero. She's a hero to my wife, and she's a hero to me. She's a hero to a lot of people, especially women who are interested in science, don't have a lot of role models to look up to. And Erin MacDonald is one of the few, and she's brilliant and widely fascinating. So I hope you enjoy this episode as much as I enjoyed having her on, and I hope that comes through with it. So whether you are listening to this on the podcast or watching the video right now, I hope you subscribe and help me get. The more people I have subscribed, the more I will get guests like her on, the bigger names. There you go. So please, if you haven't yet, please subscribe to my YouTube channels. Please subscribe to the podcast. Comment, leave a review. That would help. You could give it a try. Let's see if that helps. Anyway, I want you to sit back and relax, open your hearts and open your ear holes, and listen to my 7 questions interview episode with Dr. Erin MacDonald.
You're watching a movie with Silas.
Dr. MacDonald.
Hi.
I'm just trying not to fanboy too much right here.
It's all good.
Let me tell you, as a lifelong Star Trek fan and a fan of great nerds, it's just such a this one. I posted yesterday when it kind of hit me, like who I was interviewing, and I was like, I asked a bunch of people, okay, aside from you explaining why the Earth isn't flat, what else should I ask you that they're covering up? No, but what I I did get a bunch of very smart questions for you, right?
Love it.
However, this is still my show. So I do have 7 questions that I do ask everybody before I get to those very intelligent questions.
Love it.
So I'm a stand-up comedian who also reviews movies and does stuff, and I run a comedy show called The Real Nerds of Comedy at Emerald City Comic Con. Are you at Comic Con right now? Are you?
No, that's in a couple weeks.
That's in a couple weeks. Okay.
Yeah.
So
yeah, and I used to do Emerald City back in the day. But yeah.
Gosh, yeah. So I'm up here and I do a comedy show. So I'm well known as a nerd. So people knew my fan base is very nerdy, and they're very excited about the. I guarantee this will be my most listened to episode of the year. I will tell you that. So normally my interviews are normally longer. So this is.
All good.
So I have to. Usually, I warm people up before we get into these questions, but they're not weird. They're not too weird. Question number 1.
Okay.
What are you most nerdy about? And it doesn't have to be Star Trek. Like it can be, or it doesn't have to be your job, right?
We'll say Star Trek is a given.
Yeah.
Let's set that aside. Mass Effect. I will talk about Mass Effect all day, every day. The video game series is my favorite thing. It is my favorite fictional world. I play the entire trilogy once a year.
Really?
I love it. Yes, it's my favorite, most nerdy thing.
What about that? Because I was introduced to that a number of years ago after the 3rd one had come out, but then I started. So I started. What is it about it that pulled you in?
Well, I love being able to create your own character, first of all. As a video game player, as a woman video game player, I don't usually get to play characters that I can make look like me. I'm usually playing masculine coded characters.
Okay.
And so being able to make my own female Shepherd is the character's name for those not familiar. And then how it's basically Star Trek. I mean, you're trying to save the galaxy.
Yeah.
You're going around to different worlds, you're scanning planets, and then you also have so much social interaction of the characters that you bring with you. The story is so rich. And then the fact that your save file and all the choices you make carry through 3 games, and you can date aliens. It's a perfect, I just love it. That is what I'm most nerdy about. Yeah.
Is it? Because when I told someone about the game and I was so blown away that your choices affected you through it, someone who wasn't really a video gamer though, but that I guess dealt with they're very nerdy. They're like, oh, that's not that big of a deal. They didn't think it was that big of a deal. It's a
cool.
big deal, right? I mean, okay, I thought so.
It's a big deal. And because I think the way that they integrate it so well, because there are games where choices matter, but it doesn't really feel like they do. You still feel like you're kind of being shoved down a story path.
Yes.
With Mass Effect, like you can be responsible for like your companions not surviving. And then that wholly changes the story, even in the next game where they're gone. Yeah. And now they do have options to bring people back, but like that game is so integrated.
You have to start over. Like you can't just
if you want, right? I mean, you can continue. Like they do have sub characters that'll come in.
But I mean, like you can't like if they die, it's done for that. Unless you restart the game, you're gonna you deal with those consequences.
Judiciously have a million save files like I do, but
yeah. Oh, okay.
It's fun. Yeah, it's just a fun world, and I'm just obsessed with it. I'm obsessed with it.
Oh, that's wonderful. Okay, number 2, what is something that you love to eat?
That I love to eat.
Yeah.
I will say British style takeout curry. I'm very careful not to say Indian curry because it is westernized, as it were.
Okay.
But
is that like Chinese food here is not like Chinese food? Okay. So
yeah,
British.
Exactly.
Okay.
Like curry takeout. I lived in the UK for a number of years. And the curry there is fantastic. And that's my favorite thing to eat.
The one time I went to England, I did not try the curry, and I do regret it that I was so trying to get in the mode of eating pasties and fish
totally.
and warm beer. It was okay.
Love it.
Speaking of number 3, what's something that you love to drink?
Cask ales, warm beer.
For real?
Caledonia 80 shilling is my favorite beer. Get it in Scotland. A cask ale draw. Yeah, so good. I mean, warm, not a freezing American cold.
Yeah.
But I just love cask ale. It's so smooth. It's so clean. It's just, and it's so like a sense memory of sitting in pubs, that because it's not something you can replicate at home.
Is there a scientific explanation on the warm beer? Like, is it just that we are wimps in the US that we've over refrigerated everything? Is it that it tastes different, right? When it's warm?
So it's because you're cask pulling it, so it's not like hyper pressurized already. Because when we pull a draft, like it's already pressurized, so the beer comes up and out. With a cask draw, you're actually pulling the beer into the can, so it's a lot smoother. But then you have to remember too, like the latitudes of the UK versus America are very different, and the UK inherently is a pretty cold, damp, and wet place. So if you put your kegs in the basement, they'll stay pretty cold. That cold enough that it's still refreshing and nice to drink, and the beer doesn't go bad. If you even have a basement in America,
right.
it can still get pretty warm. And so we just have to refrigerate it no matter what. It's the same with like air conditioning, right? These pubs have been around a long time in the UK, and they've got their systems already built.
Well, I recently discovered, if you didn't know your fridge was not working, that you can actually experience warm milk and not even quite realize it until you
it's funny how that
discover
happens.
the difference. Yeah. All right. Number 4, what kind of music do you love?
I love Scandinavian heavy metal. Yeah.
What's a band?
So my favorite band of all time is Nightwish. They tend to be a little bit more operatic, symphonic heavy metal. But like if I'm going to pull up a radio station to listen to, it's going to be Viking heavy metal music. L.U. Vetti is another good example. Korpiklani is another good one.
Now, Scandinavia, they speak what language?
Some of them. Depending on where they're from, the Finnish or Norwegian or.
Are you fluent in those, or do you just like the?
Just like it, but most of them are English lyrics.
Really,
for the most part, yeah. And it's more just the style of music. But like Tyr is a band from the Faroe Islands, and their stuff is all Viking themed, and it's just cool music. I love it. I'm a big metalhead.
Okay. What I've wondered about sci-fi. My friends into sci-fi, typically, I'd say there's a demographic that that's really into rock way more than like a hip hop. Like I felt like the only person who was nerdy and listened to hip hop for many years until I moved to an urban area. I'm in Seattle now, so
got it.
Now I've met nerds with similar tastes. But okay, number 5. What do you love to create?
Ooh, I'm a creative person. I love telling stories. So I wanted to be a storyteller forever. I've written fan fiction since LiveJournal was where we wrote fan fiction. And learning how to write television has been a joy because I love TV and movies, and I always struggled to write novels because I was never like trained in how to write. I just had stories I wanted to tell.
Mm-hmm.
But once I started working in television and I saw scripts, and it was such a medium that I was so familiar with, it was very natural to me. So I am coming up with stories all the time. Like I just love coming up with, whether it's sci-fi stories or whether it's historical dramas or whatever it is. I still tend to lean towards sci-fi. But again, it's like, that's what I do. So I'm very lucky that I get to create stories and I get to create television.
If you were so drawn to storytelling, what pulled you into the science realm? Did you see a story there?
Yeah, I wanted to be Dana Scully.
Really?
Yeah. And Dr. Arroway from Contact. I just wanted to be them. And that's what motivated me to go into science. And then even while I was in science, I was still watching TV and movies that motivated me to stay a scientist because they made science look so cool. And that's what I was good at it. And I enjoyed doing it. And I loved space. I loved studying space. And so that motivation was there already. But wanting to be a scientist, I didn't even honestly think that because I did have so many false starts of writing stories that I just felt like I wasn't good at it. And I didn't even know really about script writing at all until I started working in television. And then it was like, oh no, this is what I meant to do. This is what I love doing. Yeah.
Well, we're glad you did that. Okay.
Thank you.
Number 6, what's a game you love to play?
Other than Mass Effect.
Yeah.
Well, are we doing board games or video games?
It's all open. That's an open question. But
board games, I will say my favorite board game of all time is the Firefly board game. It is underrated. It's brilliant. It feels like Firefly. Yes, based on the TV show.
Series. Yeah. Okay.
It's so good. It's so good. You have a ship and you hire crew and you take jobs and you move around the verse and it's freaking great.
Is it a long game? Is it
it depends. So they have each game is you have different goals. So you can pick shorter games. You can even play solo. But they have so many different games that you could play with people. You can do PvP, or you could just be first person to get this job. You can do one where you're just the first person to get jobs solid, get done with jobs with 5 different people. And you could just be all right, first person to 5 people finishes 5 jobs. Yeah.
It's amazing. Okay. I'm going to look that. I'm going to see if I can find that around here.
But obviously Mass Effect or Dragon Age.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Dragon. All right. And the last of the 7 questions.
Okay.
In 100 years, when someone reads your biography, what do you want to be remembered for?
Ooh. Someone called me this and I love it so much that I put it on my website. I want to be remembered as the equivalent of Julia Child, but for science. I want to be someone who is so authentic, remembered for being so authentically themselves and making hard things accessible to people. That's what I love. Yeah.
Okay.
It's a good question. Yeah.
From some of my listener questions when you're consulting on this, on Star Trek, how much is what percentage would you say in Star Trek is actual science versus just made up BS?
None of it is wrong. I will say it all has some root in real science. Even if we are acknowledging that we break physics, the assumption is at some point we fixed it in the future. Star Trek is not a fantasy universe. There's everything we have, all of our technology is all rooted in some scientific principles. Yeah.
If I go fast enough, will I become a salamander? Is that what?
You had to go there. I will say, I'm not an evolutionary biologist, but I give a talk with one who's also a Star Trek fan. And it's really fun to pull those strings because also there's the TNG episode where they future evolve into I think Barclay becomes a spider.
Yes. Yeah.
So we'll say the because it depends what you're saying, right? There are weird and wacky things that happen. There's giant space hands that come out and grab ships, but still the fundamental world building, I'll say, of Star Trek is rooted in science. The ships that they have, it's in our own galaxy, the planets that they go to, the weird and wacky stories that happen that we can play with a little bit. But I would say the fundamental world building, I think, is something why people are drawn to Star Trek like that.
Okay. I'll buy that as an answer.
Okay. All right.
I won't get into spore drives either.
I was not involved with spore drives.
Okay. What is your favorite made-up science thing from Star Trek that you wish was true?
Heisenberg compensators. Those are a component of the transporter that allows the transporter to break the laws of physics to be able to transport people. So really quickly, the Heisenberg uncertainty principle is the reason we will never have a transporter. It's a physics law that says you can never know exactly where a particle is. And if you're in a transporter and you're breaking yourself into particles, you want to know where they are to put them back. And they have, and that's the Heisenberg uncertainty principle says you can't do that. In Star Trek: The Next Generation, good old O'Brien mentions that the Heisenberg compensator needs to be repaired. And the question then is, how does the Heisenberg compensator work? It works very well. Thank you for asking.
Is warp speed more likely to happen than a transporter? Then?
Yeah, the principles of warp drive don't violate physics laws. We just don't have the technology or the energy or an understanding of how to manipulate space-time yet in order to build a warp drive. But nothing in the laws of physics makes warp drive impossible.
Would it counteract the Einstein's theory? Like, I mean, would it mean that everybody does age though? Like when
so
they came back?
That's called special relativity. And that's if you are traveling close to, but not at the speed of light. If your ship itself is going at like 99% of light speed, that's when that effect comes into play. Warp drive it wraps your ship in a bubble of space-time where inside the bubble your laws of physics are still perfectly valid and normal, and you're not doing anything timey-wimey, you're not breaking relativity laws, anything like that, and that bubble of space-time is carrying you faster than the speed of light, which physically there's nothing in those laws that says that space-time itself can't go faster than the speed of light. So that's why it still works.
Okay.
A good question.
Okay. And a last question that every scientist probably knows the answer to. Does pineapple belong on pizza?
Yes, and anyone who says otherwise is wrong.
Thank you. Okay. Thank you. That's you've solved many debates right there. My wife Gretchen would also like me to tell you that you are her hero. I showed her your video last night, and she loves you. And my name is Silas Lindenstein from Seattle. If you ever make it to ECC again, I hope I can meet you up there and you can show you the comedy show there.
I love it.
But I appreciate you. Thank you, Dr. MacDonald. Keep doing what you do. Live long and prosper. All right. Prodigy, season 2. We'll check you out.
Yes. Go watch Prodigy.
Okay. Thank you. Bye now.
Bye.
And that was the interview. Usually I close out with my 7 questions, but I had to start the 7 questions early to make sure that I got them all in. So that's why. And now I'm here to say bye to you because I didn't want it to just end. So, hey, if you enjoyed the interview, thanks again. Remember, like, subscribe, all that, and share this podcast and video cast. And I thank you for that. But mostly, I thank you for watching a movie with Silas Lindenstein and keeping things black and a half.
You're watching a movie with Silas Lindenstein. In the theaters you find this, so go and press play and rewind this. This picture is timeless. Love it like it or we lose it, can't find it. And we ain't keen on being reminded about the film if it isn't tough. We spend a lot of time at the cinema. It's just me and my friends, we watch plenty stuff. For movies, yeah, I've been above. Whether big or they small, no, for me don't make a difference. Love them. You're watching a movie with Silas Lindenstein. In the theaters you find this, so go and press play and rewind this. This picture is timeless. Love it like it or we lose it, can't find it. And we ain't keen on being reminded about the film if it didn't hit. No, gotta lose it. Watch movies with my friends, bringing joy, that's the blueprint. So come on and let's do this. Leave pain behind us and relax your mind. Come watch a movie with Silas. Yeah.